was supposed to be a simple weekend getaway. 3 college friends, Adil, Rafi, and Hassan, had planned to spend 2 nights exploring the remote forest near Muri, far from the noise of the city. They wanted to camp, take photos, and make a short documentary about forgotten places in Pakistan. But what they found was something no one could explain, something that shouldn't have existed. The first day was normal enough. They reached the forest by evening, parked their jeep near a small trail, and hiked deep inside. The air was cold and heavy, filled with the smell of pine and wet earth. By the time they set up camp, night had fallen, and the only sound was the wind brushing through the trees. Around midnight, while sitting by the fire, Adil noticed something strange. Far through the woods, he spotted a faint yellow light, flickering like a lantern inside a house. But there weren't supposed to be any houses this deep in the forest. Rafi brushed it off, saying it was probably a reflection or another group camping nearby. But Adil couldn't shake the curiosity. The next morning, they decided to check it out. After walking for about an hour, they found a narrow dirt path covered in weeds and old footprints leading deeper into the trees. Following it, they stumbled upon a small clearing, and there it was. An old wooden cabin. The structure looked ancient, almost forgotten. The walls were gray with rot, the roof sagging, and one of the windows had been shattered. Adil walked closer and noticed a rusty sign nailed near the door. The words were barely readable, but one phrase stood out clearly. "Do not enter." Rafi laughed nervously. Maybe this was some kind of ranger's post. Let's take some pictures for the documentary. But Hassan, who had been silent the whole time, frowned. "No," he said quietly. "We should go back. I don't like this place." Ignoring him, Adil pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, echoing through the empty forest. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the scent of mold and dust. Broken furniture lay scattered across the floor. There were old photographs on the walls, black and white, showing a family of 4. Their faces were faded, but the children's eyes looked oddly real. Too real. Suddenly, Hassan called out from another room. "Guys, come see this." They followed him into what looked like a kitchen. On the table sat 3 dusty plates, each still holding bits of rotten food, as if the people had left in a hurry. But what chilled them the most was a single handprint on the wall, smeared in something dark and dry, the color of old blood. Rafi took out his camera to film. "This is perfect for our video," he whispered. But as soon as he pressed record, the temperature dropped sharply. Their breath became visible, and the faint sound of whispering filled the room. Soft, broken words that seemed to come from behind the walls. The camera flickered. Then the light from the window dimmed, as if something had passed in front of it. Hassan turned toward the door. "Did you see that?" No one replied. The whispers grew louder, now circling them. Overlapping voices, saying something they couldn't understand. Adil grabbed his flashlight and pointed it toward the hallway. For a split second, he saw it, a shadowy figure standing at the far end of the corridor. It was tall, with glowing red eyes that reflected the light like an animal's. Then, it vanished. They ran. Branches snapped under their feet as they bolted out of the cabin and into the forest. None of them looked back, too afraid to see what might be following. When they finally reached their campsite, it was already evening again, even though they had only been gone for an hour. That night, none of them could sleep. The forest seemed alive, whispering, breathing. And when Adil woke up around 3 a.m., he noticed something that made his blood freeze. Just outside their tent, barely visible through the fabric, was the faint glow of a yellow light. The same one they had seen in the woods. Adil froze. The faint yellow glow outside their tent didn't flicker like a normal flashlight. It pulsed, slow and rhythmic, as if it were alive. For a long minute he didn't move, didn't even breathe. His heart pounded so hard that he thought the sound alone might give him away. He nudged Rafi awake, whispering sharply, "Rafi, look outside." Rafi groaned and sat up, his face pale in the dim light of Adil's phone. When he peered through the small opening of the tent flap, his expression changed from sleepy irritation to sheer terror. There, standing just a few meters away, was a figure holding the glowing lantern, the same warm flickering light they had seen inside the cabin. But the figure wasn't moving. It just stood there, half hidden behind a tree, facing their tent. "What the hell is that?" Rafi whispered, his voice trembling. Adil slowly reached for his flashlight, but before he could turn it on, the glow began to move, swaying side to side like someone walking closer. The soft crunch of leaves echoed with each step. "Wake Hassan!" Adil hissed. Hassan stirred awake, confused. "What's going on?" But before anyone could explain, a cold gust of wind tore through the campsite. The fire they had left burning outside went out instantly, plunging everything into near-total darkness. The glow from the lantern vanished too, leaving nothing but the sound of rustling trees. Then came the whispers again, the same ones they had heard inside the cabin, faint, overlapping, and impossible to locate. They seemed to come from every direction. "Pack up," Adil said shakily. "We're leaving." Now they threw their gear together, not caring what they left behind. Within minutes, they were moving fast down the trail, guided only by the weak light of their phones. But the deeper they went, the more they realized something was wrong. The forest was changing. The path that should have led back to the jeep now seemed unfamiliar. The trees closer together, the ground uneven and covered in roots that hadn't been there before. It was as if the forest itself had shifted. "Are we lost?" Rafi asked, his voice breaking. "No," Adil insisted. "We just have to keep going straight." He stopped. There, ahead of them, through the trees, the faint yellow glow appeared again. "No, no way," Hassan whispered. "We went the other direction." The light was closer this time, steady, waiting. Then, out of the darkness, the outline of the cabin emerged once more. The same sagging roof, the same shattered window, as if they had never left. Rafi screamed, "We've been walking in circles!" But Adil shook his head violently. "No, that's impossible. We went the other way." Suddenly, the door of the cabin creaked open by itself. Inside, the warm yellow light glowed brighter, spilling across the forest floor. Something was moving within, a shadow pacing slowly from side to side. "Run!" Adil shouted. They bolted again, crashing through the trees blindly. Branches whipped at their faces, and the cold air burned in their lungs. But no matter how far they ran, the whispers followed, growing louder, angrier, chanting in a language none of them could understand. Then Hassan tripped over something hard. When he turned to look, his blood turned to ice. It was a small wooden doll, carved crudely to resemble a human, its face painted white, and its eyes made of tiny black stones. It looked exactly like one of the children from the photographs inside the cabin. Rafi knelt down. "This wasn't here before." Before he could finish, the doll's head turned. Just slightly, enough for all three of them to see. Rafi screamed, tossing it away. The whispers turned into a piercing shriek, and suddenly, every sound in the forest went silent. No wind, no insects, nothing. The air felt dead. Adil grabbed both of them and ran until his legs could barely carry him. They didn't stop until they reached a small clearing and saw the faint shimmer of moonlight on the jeep's windshield. Relief flooded through them as they stumbled toward it, gasping for air. But when Adil turned to check behind them, the forest edge was completely still. The light, the whispers, the cabin, all gone. They jumped into the jeep and sped down the mountain road without looking back. No one spoke a word. It wasn't until they reached the main highway that Adil dared to glance at the rearview mirror. For a moment, he thought he saw a faint yellow light far behind them, glowing faintly in the trees. He blinked, and it was gone. The three swore never to speak about it again. They deleted the footage Rafi had recorded, burned the leftover camping gear, and promised to forget. But 2 weeks later, Adil received a message on his phone. It was from an unknown number. The message contained a single photo, a blurry image of the three of them standing outside the cabin. None of them remembered anyone taking it. And in the background, through the window, the faint outline of a tall figure with glowing red eyes watched them from inside. After receiving the mysterious photo, Adil couldn't sleep for nights. The image haunted him. The blurry figure in the cabin's window with glowing red eyes seemed to stare directly at him, no matter how many times he looked at it. Rafi and Hassan, though initially dismissive, began to notice strange things as well. It started with whispers. Soft, almost imperceptible, coming through their phones, their laptops, even the walls of their apartments. No one else could hear it, only them. At first they thought it was stress or imagination, but then small tangible signs appeared. Objects shifted inexplicably, books moved from shelves, chairs slightly out of place, the faint smell of burning wood in the middle of the night. One evening, Adil returned home to find his apartment door slightly open. He was certain he had locked it. The moment he stepped inside, he froze. On the living room floor lay another wooden doll, identical to the one in the forest, its black stone eyes glinting in the dim light. He picked it up carefully, turning it over. The doll's tiny hand was pointing directly at the window. Slowly he glanced outside. Nothing, just the quiet street. But that night the whispers returned. This time they were louder, forming words he could almost understand. "Come back, join us," they seemed to chant. A chill ran down his spine as he realized they sounded familiar, like the whispers from the cabin, only now clearer, closer, almost inside his own head. Rafi called the next day, voice shaking. "Adil, something's in my apartment. I saw it. It was standing in the corner, all black, tall, watching me." Hassan had already experienced it too. He refused to stay in his room after dark, sleeping on the couch with the lights on. All three knew that whatever they had encountered in the forest had followed them home. The cabin was no longer just a memory. It was alive in some unholy way. Adil, determined to find answers, researched the area. Locals spoke in hushed tones about a family that disappeared decades ago, the same family in the photographs. The cabin, they said, was cursed. Anyone who entered would be haunted until they either went insane or vanished. No one dared go near it anymore. That night the entity made its presence undeniable. The three friends gathered in Adil's apartment, sitting in a circle with every light on. Suddenly all the lights went out. The city noises vanished. Complete silence enveloped them, broken only by a faint scratching at the walls. Then came the glow. Yellow light, flickering, creeping from the hallway into the room. The tall shadow appeared, moving slowly, impossibly, as if the darkness itself had taken shape. Its eyes burned red, cold, unblinking, and the whispers turned into screams. Rafi screamed, trying to run, but the apartment felt like a trap. Doors and windows disappeared, replaced by walls of shadow. Hassan collapsed to the floor, sobbing, while Adil tried to confront the figure. "What do you want?" he shouted, his voice echoing through the darkness. The shadow paused. Then it spoke. A guttural, broken voice that sounded like 1,000 whispers fused together. You saw what should not be seen. You entered my home. Now you belong." The temperature dropped sharply. Their breaths became visible as frost began to form on the windows. The dolls they had seen in the forest and at home appeared, now dozens of them, crawling across the floor like tiny black beetles, moving toward them. Adil remembered the photo. Maybe it was a warning. Maybe it was a clue. He grabbed his phone and opened the image again, holding it up toward the shadow. It paused, just for a second, and in that moment, the three of them ran. The floor of the apartment seemed endless, stretching into darkness, doors appearing and disappearing as they ran blindly. Finally, they stumbled outside. Morning light bathed the city streets, warm and normal, yet the shadow lingered in their minds. They looked back. Nothing. The city seemed unchanged, but the memory of that red-eyed figure burned in their minds. Weeks passed. They tried to forget, but the dolls kept appearing, sometimes on their desks, sometimes outside their doors, always pointing, always watching. They moved without explanation. One night, Adil received another photo. This time, it was of their three faces, sleeping in their respective beds. And behind them, barely visible in the frame, the tall shadow, red eyes glowing, watching. They realized the truth. The entity from the cabin was not confined to the forest. It had followed them into the world, patient, eternal, and relentless. Wherever they went, it would always be there, lurking just beyond the edge of sight. No one knew how to stop it. And so, the three friends lived in fear, knowing one day, perhaps sooner than they expected, it would claim them entirely.